All right, let's talk about AI. We're going to cut through all the noise today. Everyone talks about the AI revolution, but what's really happening inside actual businesses? We're going to look at this from an engineer's perspective to separate the hype from what's actually going on. So let's dive in.
You see headlines just like this one pretty much every single day. There's this common belief that AI is this unstoppable force, right? A technological tidal wave that's just changing every single industry, practically overnight. It's the biggest story out there.
But here's the real question we need to ask. What if the view from the inside, from the engineers who are actually trying to build this stuff, tells a totally different story? A story that's, well, less about a lightning-fast revolution and a lot more about a slow, careful evolution.
To really get what's going on, we have to start by looking at the story we're all constantly being told, this really powerful narrative that we can just call the AI hype machine. Yeah, this is that story we hear all the time from the media and from tech evangelists. It's this picture of super fast, widespread disruption. Industries are getting turned upside down, jobs are being transformed, and any company that doesn't jump on board is going to be left in the dust. It's a really exciting story, for sure, but is it the whole story? So, okay, if that's the hype, what's the reality? To figure that out, we need to get to the heart of it, with an engineer's reality check from someone who's actually working on the ground. And this quote, this is the key right here. It comes directly from an automation engineer who works with real clients in the real world. And what they're telling us is that this situation is not some simple, dramatic takeover. Nope, it's way more complex and way more careful than the headlines want you to believe.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting because this slide just lays out the gaps so clearly. The narrative we hear is all about this massive, industry-wide transformation. But the reality? Well, the reality is that AI adoption is nascent, which just means it's in its infancy, it's just beginning, and it's really limited to very specific, contained areas.
So what does limited actually look like in the wild? Well, for most companies, AI adoption is still in the super early experimental stages. I mean, full-scale, company-wide deployments are incredibly rare. And the most common use case you'll actually find out there today, customer support chatbots. And even then, it's only a handful of the really forward-thinking companies that have put them on the front lines. This slow, cautious approach, it brings up a huge question. If AI is so powerful, why are businesses so hesitant? And the answer comes down to this really fundamental issue that we'll call the predictability problem.
It's a totally fair question, right? Businesses are always looking for that competitive edge. So why on earth would they move slowly on what could be the biggest technological leap in a generation? The answer is, well, it's surprisingly simple.
It all boils down to this one concept: deterministic output. Now, this has been the absolute bedrock of business automation for decades. It just means that if you put A into a system, you get B out every single time. It's guaranteed, it's predictable, it's reliable, no surprises.
And this just perfectly shows the core tension here. Traditional automation is built on that rock-solid predictability. AI systems, on the other hand, while they are incredibly powerful, they can also be unpredictable. Because they learn and adapt, they can sometimes give you unexpected results or errors, even after you've tested them like crazy. And for a business, that unpredictability is a massive risk. I mean, think about the really important stuff: financial transactions, supply chain logistics, legal compliance. In those areas, you just cannot have a system that might make a mistake. Reliability isn't just a nice-to-have, it's absolutely non-negotiable. So when you're faced with this huge risk, how are companies actually responding? Well, they're not ignoring AI, not at all, but they are being incredibly careful. Their strategy is a cautious one that you can sum up in 3 words: watch, wait, and test. The vast majority of organizations, even the really ambitious ones, are in this mode. They see the incredible promise of AI, but they are not ready to just hand over the keys to their most critical systems. So they're watching the technology get better, waiting for it to become more stable, and testing it out in very controlled environments. And this cautious approach, it follows a very clear, very logical 4-step playbook. First, they launch small, contained pilot programs. Then, they gather that crucial feedback from their own employees. The third step, and this is the most critical one, is to meticulously evaluate every possible risk. And only after all that do they make a final decision on whether to roll it out wider. And that's because, for any responsible company, the top priorities just haven't changed. They are, and they have to be, security, compliance with laws and regulations, and above all else, maintaining the trust of their customers. And those priorities will always outweigh the rush to adopt the newest shiny tech. Which brings us to our final and maybe most important takeaway from all of this. This isn't a story about companies rejecting AI. It's a story about being smart and leading with pragmatism over promises. So here's the bottom line. Everyone agrees the promise of AI is enormous. The hype isn't necessarily wrong about the final destination, it's just a bit too optimistic about how fast we're going to get there. The real path forward isn't some giant leap. It's a series of small, steady, incremental steps.
And this quote from the engineer on the ground just perfectly captures the entire argument, doesn't it? Responsible adoption isn't about being first or being the fastest. It's about having the patience to understand the risks and the pragmatism to get it right. Which leaves us with a final question to chew on. We always frame innovation as this super fast-paced race. But in the high-stakes world of AI, with all of its incredible power and its pitfalls, is it possible that the slow and steady tortoise is actually playing a much smarter game than the hare? Something to think about.